A shadow, darker than the raven's wing that adorned Odin's helm, crept across Asgard. It wasn't a physical darkness, but a chilling uncertainty that gnawed at the hearts of even the most valiant Einarjar. The golden halls of Valhalla, once echoing with boisterous laughter and the clang of celebratory mead horns, now held the hush of a tomb. Odin, the Allfather, sat upon his throne, his single eye a wellspring of wisdom and a storm of fury locked on the flickering flames of the central hearth. His beard, usually a flowing river of silver, hung limp around his jaw, each strand heavy with the weight of the whispers. These whispers, carried on the very breath of the cosmos, spoke of a horror awakening in the frozen wastelands of Jotunheim. Jormungandr, the Midgard's serpent, legendary coiling terror of the world, stirred in its icy prison. Legends spoke of its colossal form, encircling Midgard Earth whole, its venom capable of melting mountains and choking the sun. Its awakening meant only one thing: Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, loomed closer. But whispers were not the only harbingers of doom. Loki, the trickster god, returned from a scouting mission to Jotunheim, his usual mischievous glint in his eyes replaced by a chilling emptiness. The news he brought was worse than any prophecy. The whispers were no mere rumors, they were pronouncements from a malevolent force gathering power within the icy realm. It spoke of alliances forged with dark beings, whispers of ancient magic stirring, and whispers, yes, even whispers of a traitor within Asgard itself. Panic, a serpent as venomous as Jormungandr itself, began to coil around the hearts of the gods. Thor, the god of thunder, a warrior of unparalleled strength with a temper to match, roared a challenge. His mighty Mjolnir, the warhammer that could level mountains, slammed against the oaken table, sending tremors through the very foundations of Valhalla. We cannot wait. We must strike them down before they grow strong. To Jotunheim we ride. Odin raised a hand, silencing the thunderous echo of Thor's declaration. His voice, usually a rumbling command, was now a low, gravelly murmur, heavy with the weight of ages. War is a tempest, Thor, he rumbled, and we must not be swept away in its fury. To attack unprovoked would be to invite catastrophe. We must find another way. Days turned into weeks, each one heavier than the last. Heimdall, the all-seeing guardian of the Bifrost Bridge, reported a chilling shift in the whispers. Not only did they speak of Jormungandr's awakening, but also of a shadow within Asgard. A traitor, cloaked in deception, feeding information to the giants, working towards the downfall of the Aesir. Suspicion, a venomous dagger, pierced the bonds of trust between the gods. Thor accused Loki, his distrust of the trickster god, a festering wound. Freya, the goddess of love and beauty, her heart heavy with the possibility of betrayal, pleaded for reason. Odin, ever the strategist, observed them all, his gaze heavy with a burden he could not share. Then, under the baleful glow of a blood-red moon, a scream shattered the uneasy peace. It was Sif, the golden-haired warrior goddess, clutching a bleeding gash across her abdomen. She stumbled into the hall, her voice ragged with pain. "Loki," she gasped, "he attacked me, stole a fragment of Yggdrasil." A gasp rippled through the hall. The world tree, Yggdrasil, held the 9 realms in its branches, its roots anchoring the very fabric of reality. A fragment, an artifact imbued with its power, could be used for unimaginable purposes. In the wrong hands, it could tear down the very walls of Asgard, leaving the gods vulnerable to the might of Jotunheim. The whispers grew louder, sharper, laced with a sickening glee. The traitor had tipped his hand, and fear, a cold serpent, coiled around the hearts of the Aesir. Odin, with a grimace that etched itself deep into his aged face, ordered Thor and a small, elite band of warriors to chase after Loki. It felt like a desperate gamble. Without the World Tree fragment, they were at a severe disadvantage. Heimdall, his all-seeing gaze fixed on the borders of Jotunheim, reported a chilling sight: a colossal gathering of Jotun forces. War was upon them, and Asgard stood unprepared. As Thor and his companions disappeared in a shimmering arc across the Bifrost, a lone figure emerged from the shadows behind Odin's throne. It was Loki, his face a mask of cold triumph. "The game has begun, Father," he purred, his voice dripping with malice. The revelation shattered the remaining fragments of trust within Asgard. Fury contorted Thor's face, a storm brewing within him that threatened to eclipse even his mighty Mjolnir. But before he could react, Odin raised a skeletal hand, his one eye blazing with a terrible light. "Let him go," he rasped, his voice laden with a weariness that chilled the gods to the bone. His capture, at this point, would be a mere distraction. We must focus on the true threat, the traitor, and the gathering storm in Jotunheim. The storm of dissent erupted. Freya, her normally radiant face etched with sorrow, pleaded with Odin. "But Allfather, without the fragment, how can we defend ourselves?" Odin remained silent for a moment, his gaze piercing the very fabric of reality. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low rumble. "We must seek aid from an unexpected source. Mimir, the wise head who resides beside the Well of Erd at the foot of Yggdrasil." A murmur of apprehension rippled through the hall. Mimir was an enigmatic being, said to possess knowledge of all that has been, is, and ever shall be. However, the price of his knowledge was always high, often demanding a sacrifice of something precious. "What sacrifice will he demand?" boomed Heimdall, his voice heavy with foreboding. "That," Odin replied. A flicker of pain crossing his face remains to be seen. Meanwhile, Thor and his companions, the stoic Sif, the cunning Loki, though his true allegiance remained unclear, the ever-loyal Fandral the Dashing, and the stoic Hogun the Grim raced across the Bifrost Bridge, a shimmering rainbow pathway connecting Asgard to the other realms. As they neared Jotunheim, the vibrant colours of the Bifrost faded, replaced by the desolate greys and icy blues of the frost giant realm. A monstrous fortress of ice and bone loomed before them, its jagged spires scraping the sky. This was Utgard, the capital of Jotunheim, and the seat of power of the frost giant king, Thrym. It was here that Loki, the enigmatic trickster god, was likely headed. As they approached the fortress gates, a grotesque figure emerged, a Jotun warrior, taller than 3 men combined, with skin like glacial ice and eyes that burned like embers. In his hand, he clutched the stolen fragment of Yggdrasil, its emerald glow casting an eerie light on his face. "Turn back," Aesir the Jotun roared, his voice a guttural growl that echoed across the frozen plains. "This place has no welcome for you." "We come for what was stolen," Thor thundered, Mjolnir crackling with pent-up energy. "Return the fragment, and perhaps we can avoid bloodshed." The Jotun warrior laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Bloodshed is inevitable," he boomed. "The giants have waited for this day for millennia. The age of the Aesir is at an end." With a battle cry that echoed across the frozen wasteland, the Jotun charged, the stolen fragment pulsating with an ominous green light. Thor, fueled by righteous fury, raised Mjolnir high, ready to unleash a devastating blow. But before he could react, a blinding flash erupted from the fragment, engulfing them all. When the light subsided, Thor found himself separated from his companions, standing alone in a vast, otherworldly landscape. A swirling mist obscured the surroundings, and a voice, ancient and unsettling, whispered in his ear, "Welcome, Thor Odinson, to the games of Utgard."